So we wanted to bring the math that we had learned in fluid dynamics to crowd flow, primarily to understand how stampedes start. An individual in their professional life gets paid in two currencies. On ESPN Crick Info, we created a set of products called Smart Stats. No US faculty member gets the kind of respect in their ecosystem that an Indian faculty member gets within India.
Hi, my name is Amrut. We've heard that IIT Madras is the best place to build. So we've come down to the Sudan Shankar Innovation Hub. We want to meet some people. These are builders. We want to talk to them about their work and also ask them what makes IIT Madras the best place to build. Hi, welcome to the Best Place to Build podcast. This is your host, Amrut. I'm sitting here with Professor Mahesh Panchagnula. He's one of the most popular professors on campus, and we'll learn today why. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Amrit, for having me.
Professor, welcome to the podcast. I know there's a lot of ground we have to cover. We have to cover your research interests. You were a student here at IIT Madras. You've been a faculty for a while. There's some work we have to cover about the ACR office, the incubation cell. And it's just a lot, but let's start with what I think is definitely the most unexpected piece of news I've heard from IIT Madras in a long time, which was the admission of the sports excellence quota. What is, I mean, I guess it's popularly called sports quota, but it's a sports excellence program,
Sports Excellence Admissions Program.
admissions program. So can you explain what it is?
Sure. First, thank you for having me, Amrit. I've been a big fan of the last several episodes that you've made with several of our alumni, faculty. And it does a wonderful job of bringing out an angle, a view of IIT Madras that I think has been missing for some time. So thank you for stepping in to fill the gap.
But I'm just a storyteller.
Wonderful. That's exactly, I think, who we need more of around this place. Sports excellence admissions has been a game changer in many ways. When an institution like IIT Madras lays emphasis on a pursuit that was not hitherto rewarded, in the classical JEE, math, chemistry, physics sort of a framework, it raises multiple eyebrows. It raises multiple aspirations. So it's one of those things that raise both eyebrows and aspirations, and it's a phenomenal initiative, I think. Uh, Formally, we've chosen to admit two students into each of our undergraduate programs. And these two students have to qualify JEE Advanced.
Okay.
So they are, in some sense, not too distant from the rest of their peer students in the class in the old math, physics, chemistry rubric of evaluation. But their choice of which branch they actually end up in is formally decided by their sports excellence. The idea itself is fully to be credited to Professor Kamakoti, our director. Um, it was his brainchild that we should diversify the set of students that we bring in. So eventually, the set of alumni that we graduate. We are, in some sense, too one dimensional in our evaluations of students coming in. So the philosophy of diversifying the group of students that will come into IIT Madras will stay with us for some time to come. Sports excellence is just the jhanki, picture abhi baki hai.
Okay.
And as the formal process is managed by the JEE office. There's a website. I'm sure, talk about all of that. But the philosophy is to diversify the set of students that we have at IIT Madras. So imagine, we bring in about 1,200 students through the JEE Advanced route to study, 16 plus majors at the undergrad level at IIT Madras. And among them, among the 1,200, when we reach saturation, we'll have about 32 sports people.
Right.
Right. And these 32 sports people, I'm imagining we want them to keep their sport up. We want them to be training as rigorously as they did, to achieve their junior level excellence. Now imagine somebody who is taking care of their performance, taking care of their health at a completely different level.
Sure.
It has to rub off on the other 1,200 students that are living around them.
Right.
So we believe this will have a much bigger trickle effect on the other students as well, in terms of their sort of desire to be healthy and sports active.
Hmm. Makes a lot of sense. I think, I mean, I'm going back to my undergrad days, and I was not a very active student. Maybe did some NSO for a while. So you're saying that 30 out of 32 out of 1200 must have crossed JE, JE Advanced, must have crossed JE Advanced, and they must be good at sport at their level when they enter. Nice. Um, I want to understand. I feel like this is, we've heard from other countries, that other countries and universities abroad do have something like this, but it still seems quite new to India. I don't think any of the other IITs have it. I'm not sure what their thinking is. Also, I feel like IITs are perceived as sort of bureaucratic institutions which move slowly. So this sounds pretty new and advanced. And I'm wondering, how did the administration accept it? What were the challenges in getting it approved and getting it out there?
First of all, IIT is not a bureaucratic institution. We are substantially funded by the government, but we are left alone to do what we think is the best thing for faculty and students to do. I'll give you one example. In 1975, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi imposed emergency in the whole country, uh, she practically did not touch the IITs. They were left alone. Their budgets were more or less left alone, if not, slight uptick. And so that shows that the government's own stance on the IITs has always been to leave them alone and let them be the role models for the rest of the country.
Okay.
The last 10 years has been an even more of doubling down on that philosophy. We are seeing IITs and IIT faculty be led to be sort of invited to participate in a set of activities going well beyond our own classrooms, our own research labs. So, in some sense, I want to first dispel that myth.
Sure.
Right. The second
Agreed.
point, we are an independent institution. Our decision making is substantially within our own footprint. Um, Academically, all ideas that you'll see as programs start with a faculty member or a group of faculty members coming up with that idea. In this case, Professor Kamakoti, and presumably, some other small group of people that advised him. Um, then that idea comes through what we call the departmental consultative committees. So, which is all the faculty in a particular department. And if it's a program relevant to one department, they sort of discuss it in their departments. Otherwise, it goes to the next level directly, called the Board of Academic Courses, where all departments have their representatives. These BAC is a forum where ideas like the sports excellence admission were discussed threadbare.
Okay.
Whether it was a good idea to do in the first place, whether there is long term merit in this idea, whether the students would have difficulty fitting in. So all of these were discussed threadbare in these fora. And then comes the faculty senate, which comprises of all the professors at IIT Madras. So it was discussed threadbare for at least an hour, and I was party to that meeting, so I know the level of detail to which we discussed this idea before it was approved by the faculty senate. It went to our board of governors, who put their stamp of approval with the full roar of excitement. And then lo and behold, we had it up and running. So there is a process. The process is completely within our footprint, and the process is one that involves multiple stakeholders deliberation. For example, the faculty senate has student members there, so they voice their ideas as to whether this is a good idea, bad idea, and there was broad based support for this across the institution. And full credit to the whole institution to have championed this, and full credit to Professor Kamakoti for coming up with the idea and in some sense shepherding it through.
Understood.
The process didn't stop there. Once we bring these students in, we want to make sure that they are able to navigate the academic processes as easily as any other student that came through the normal beaten path of JE Advanced. So, to make sure their scholarly pursuit and sports pursuit are blended in equal measure and they are sort of making progress in equal measure, uh, Professor Kamakoti and I discussed the best path forward. And our Center of Excellence in Sports Science and Analytics, which I lead here at IIT Madras, has been given the charge of making sure these students are making progress on both their sporting front as well as their academics without much trouble. Um, just want to address one idea, one point you raised in your question. The fact that this has sort of been the norm in other countries, right? In the US, certainly the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, is very active. But broadly mixing sports with academics outside the US and maybe North America broadly is not a thing that is done very much. You will see, for example, Oxford and Cambridge have this very famous cricket match. But those cricketers that play for Oxford or Cambridge did not come through any extra special admissions process than the routine process. So the idea of encouraging sports um, is not, I'll say, outside the US, it's still somewhat of a foreign idea.
Interesting.
So I'll say this is an idea that's not just revolutionary for India, but for this part of the world.
Okay. Understood. That's amazing. So last year this was just an idea, but today it is real, and those students are here.
Last year in July, it was already real. In 24, it was an idea in November 23.
Okay. And they're here. And how are they doing? And
They're doing very well. So we had the option to admit 32 students, as I said. Last year was the very first time. And when you throw an idea like this at people, people have eyebrows raised, people have questions. So we had a small group of student athletes who applied to this program, and in the very first round in July 24, the process chose to admit 5 students.
okay.
So we have 5 student athletes right now pursuing both their sport as well as their academics at IIT Madras. They're doing very well.
So what is the mix of sports they come from?
There's a water polo.
Okay.
There's a student who is very good at swimming and water polo.
Okay.
One of them is a table tennis player, a squash player, a lady who's a national level junior squash player,
Okay.
a volleyball player, and a tennis player.
Nice. That's a big range. Um, you mentioned while you were talking about, you mentioned the Center of Excellence in Sports Science and Analytics, CESA, which is something that you lead. Can you tell us what it is?
It was an idea that was born out of it was an idea about 5 years ago, which is now a reality. It's got its own footprint at IIT with sort of a whole range of activities. I'll talk a little bit about it. But the idea was to bring the rigor of technology that we bring to, say, a gas turbine engine design or a rocket engine design to the world of athletes, coaches, and sports. The thinking of bringing world class technology to Indian athletics required a vehicle. So, this whole process of designing this vehicle started with a project we did for ESPN Cricinfo. Professor Raghunathan Rangaswamy and I led this project where we created a set of products called Smart Stats. So, yesterday was the launch of IPL.
Yeah.
If you go on ESPN Cricinfo and they have a smart scorecard, meaning somebody who scored 5 runs of 3 balls in the first 3 balls and got out is not the same as somebody who scored 5 runs of the very last 3 balls to win the match. Clearly, the 5 runs scored as winning runs are more valuable. So the smart scorecard has a way of using AI to sort of give you a more correct view of the value of the runs that were scored and the value of the wickets that were taken, You could play several what if games. What if a catch was dropped or catch was caught? What if an umpiring decision went the other way, an LBW decision? So this whole discussion around the coffee maker the next morning is far richer because of this smart scorecard. That's the fan engagement side of
Yeah, we've
things.
seen. I mean, I've seen this, and a lot of people have also seen this smart scorecard.
It was an IIT Madras
I did not know
project.
that. Okay.
Well, and starting from there, we've come a long way. We've then sort of done other things. We've now created a center of excellence. And as part of this center of excellence, we wanted to align the center's efforts to what our Olympic desires are primarily. While cricket is still one of the sports that and cricket today is of course an Olympic sport,
Sports from 2028.
but Government of India has a program called TOPS, Target Olympic Podium Scheme. And for TOPS, they've identified a small set of sports that India will double down on. And so we've aligned our research and development projects to help those sports, primarily among them boxing, archery, and shooting.
Okay.
And going forward, wrestling, judo will all be added. And so we have significant research efforts in boxing, archery, shooting, cricket, tennis, table tennis, which are all sports where India has made significant
Has
headway
won
to,
medals or um, they're a
has
champion. in-
potential
Yeah.
to really win a lot of medals, and athletics included.
Nice. Very interesting. This is and I also understand that in your research area, you've sort of had this sports engineering overlap for a while, right? It's very interesting. I think when we think of sports and engineering, what do you see in movies, right? What do you see in movies like Moneyball or people analyzing their shots or stuff like that? I think it's a lot more than that. I'm guessing.
That's a start. That's the fan engagement end. Like I said, the water cooler conversations the next morning are primarily motivated by smart stats, which was an IIT Madras project. And going forward, I think athletes and coaches and institutions within India need technical support, sensor development, data analytics, looking at a holistic view of performance in any given sport, from biomechanics to psychological, giving our sports people a psychological edge on the world stage. All of these are ideas that can be helped by technology. And in all of those spheres of development, CESA is today present. We work very closely with Sports Authority of India, with multiple federations, multiple IPL teams, multiple institutions, non-governmental institutions within India, to really further the cause of sporting in India at the elite athlete level.
Very interesting, Professor. I understand that you were in the US and you came back to India to join IIT Madras as a faculty member. And while we spoke a little bit about sports, sports is not your only interest area. You obviously have different interest areas. You mentioned to me earlier that you were you are you from is your background primarily in fluid mechanics and then some work there. Do you want to talk about it a bit?
Sure. So I'm a fluid mechanician. More broadly, I'll say a mechanician. Okay. So I work in problems which involve large sets of data. So sports happens to be one such interest. My own PhD was in aircraft engine spray combustion. I didn't do the combustion part in my PhD, but looked at fuel sprays, which are essential to producing energy out of liquid fuels. So I've continued to work in that space, and I've continued to apply tools I've learned in that space to other realms, where other problems where that skill is useful. For example, over the past 5 or 6 years, we've looked at dense crowds and large human gatherings. How do these large human gatherings move? It's almost like when you do a drone shot of a very dense large human gathering, it looks like a concrete slurry flow. You can't tell the difference unless somebody pointed out those were heads and not aggregates in a concrete flow. um, so we wanted to bring the math that we had learned in fluid dynamics to crowd flow, primarily to understand how stampedes start. And what can police do to prevent these stampedes? Where do, given a certain design of a crowd flow, crowd management system, where are stampedes likely to happen geometrically, geographically? So we've sort of worked closely with temple administrators to help them design crowd management systems. We were most recently involved with the Kumbh to do a post facto analysis of some of the crowd flow data that we have. So largely, I will say the purpose of working with large sets of data leading to actionable insights drives my broad research programs. Again, in the past half a dozen years or so, even a few years before COVID, we've been working on how what happens to aerosol when we breathe uh, all of this dust and crap into our lungs. Our lungs are remarkable organs that they are not there just to provide you oxygen. They are there. We showed this in from some of our research. The first purpose of lungs is to protect you from all of the crap we breathe in, and then make sure only the oxygen gets into your bloodstream. So that process is a remarkable design in itself.
It's very interesting that you're talking, you started with fluid mechanics and then sort of like the same principles are applicable elsewhere. I guess, as you were saying, I'm thinking a lot of engineering works like that because if you're at an intersection of a few things, you can take some stuff, learnings from here, apply it somewhere else, and so on. And that's how, um, just trying to think of other examples, but nothing's coming to my mind now.
There's lots of other examples you can sort of try and design. People have applied the equations of fluid dynamics called the Navier-Stokes equations to understanding how traffic flows. More counterintuitively, to understand how money flows through a system. You can design a whole money flow system starting with Navier-Stokes equations.
That's very interesting.
So the underlying math is very unifying and universal, and it's a fascinating topic in itself to think of it that way.
So when we started this conversation, we were talking about the decision you took early on to move back to India. And you were a student here, and then you were your MS and PhD was in US in Purdue, right? And then you were working there, and then you decided to come back. Can you run us through this decision making?
Uh, I'll say the thought process started in about 2008 time frame. I was teaching at Tennessee Tech University as an assistant professor, and my wife and I and family, we had a desire to sort of relocate back to India. But the actual relocation process was less motivated by personal factors than by professional factors. We had started to see how the Indian academic ecosystem was absolutely, growing exponentially, both in the quantum of money that was becoming available, in the set of people that were sort of gravitating towards this academic ecosystem, and the kinds of bold ideas that were being researched. So I had by then made a decision that I wanted to be part of this ecosystem. Luckily for me, IIT Madras, my alma mater, made me an offer along with a couple of other IITs, and chose to be here at IIT Madras. I've been here for about 15 years now.
Is it easy being a faculty here compared to being a faculty in the US?
There's no there's no easy
Well,
net.
I mean, like, tell me the pro con analysis of being here and being there.
Okay. The pros of being in the US academia is that you are part of a very mature ecosystem where you name an area of expertise, niche area of expertise, and you can find half a dozen people somewhere in the US academia that have spent a substantial part of their life researching only that. When I was a faculty member in Tennessee, I used to play tennis with a colleague from the humanities department who had researched the Kurdish culture, the Kurds in northern Turkey, all his life. So until the Iraq war broke out, he was just one no-name professor researching some obscure culture. But the day the Iraq war broke out, he was there to help the government to help all of the governmental agencies understand that part of the world. So
So there's a lot of depth
there is depth
and
for
progress.
for sure. So because it's the world's largest academic ecosystem by far.
Oh.
The cons of the US academic system is also the fact that it is mature and that it's more difficult to re-engineer yourself frequently. This idea of applying ideas from one domain to sort of meander into another domain is not easy at all. And in the 15 years that I've lived and worked in India as an IIT Madras faculty member, um, the rewards of sort of dabbling and going deep in multiple areas have been absolutely fascinating and
You're saying
wonderful.
counterintuitively, maybe you get a little more freedom here to sort of expand your horizon than there.
I will say academically, if you are the kind that likes sort of trying out new things, there is no better place probably in the whole world than India today. The quantum of money that's available to invest in new ideas is at the world class level. The set of people who will raise their hand and say, "Give me that money, I'll do something with it," is much smaller than any other mature ecosystem. in the
Okay, okay.
world.
So the deep tech demand and the supply of capital to try new deep tech things is higher. The number of
There is a
members
mismatch still.
is lesser. Interesting.
And alongside that, the biggest pro for the Indian academia, and this is probably a bit historical, is the pedestal on which an IIT professor is placed in India today.
Hmm.
It's just, it's so humbling. Every time I walk into, someone's office, the respect that an IIT professor gets is so humbling. And the number of doors that that card opens for the individual is so enabling. I'll tell you, no US faculty member, I've been both, so I can say this looking straight into the camera. No US faculty member gets the kind of respect in their ecosystem that an Indian faculty member gets within India.
Professor, one last question on this topic. What about salaries? Because in India, and my dad was a professor, now retired, of course. Salaries have never been so attractive for teachers in India. Have they improved over time?
In the last, I'll say at least 40 plus 50 years, our salaries have grown, faculty salaries have, at IITs and across many, many institutions in India have grown 13%, 12 to 13% compounded. Now,
Okay.
one can argue, you can take this fact, this is a piece of data, you can talk of it in you can reach two different conclusions. You can say, what shows you how bad the base was
Low base.
50, 60 years ago? Well, if you go back and see um, the standard of life back then,
Yeah.
they were not bad. It was not bad at all. So the sense of respect that I was talking about just a minute ago was prevalent even back then, if not even more. I will suggest this. There is an old report that came out in the early 50s by written or co-authored by a committee led by a man named Nalini Ranjan Sarkar. The Sarkar committee report is what led to the creation of the IIIs. In the appendix there, he talks of the pay that these professors should be pegged at. And the government practically took his suggestion on what it should be. And you compare that salary back then to the peer salaries in the industry back then, and you do the same thing today. Certainly, industry salaries have outpaced faculty salaries, and this is a global phenomena.
Yeah.
Not just in India.
Sure. In US also, it's
But
the same.
apples for apples, if you compare, what an IIT faculty draws today versus an academician anywhere else in the world, um, only about 15 countries in the world or less pay more than IIT professors get paid. Rupee for rupee without converting for purchase power parity.
So it'll be much better if you compare on purchasing power. And there's pension and insurance, and sometimes there's stay. You get to stay on campus and stuff like that.
So the getting to stay on campus, particularly at a place like IIT Madras,
It's incredible.
right. We live on a
Yeah.
forested enclave with our own personal security force,
Yeah.
guarding the 600 plus acre campus with deer prancing around, 2/3 of the land still being forested. It's a phenomenal lifestyle, blessed lifestyle to have. And I'll say broadly, this is the story at all IITs. And I was talking earlier about the number of doors that this card opens.
Yeah.
I have reached a conclusion after having lived this life for 14 plus years and having lived 18 years in the US, 14 years of my professional life in the US, 14 years of my professional life as a faculty member in India, that an individual in their professional life gets paid in two currencies. There is one currency that gets deposited on your bank account every or the first of every month. There's another currency which is the social investment that is made in you. Society chooses to invest their goodwill in me as a professor of IIT Madras. And that second currency is irreplaceable and inconvertible to the first currency.
Yeah, it's not.
We should realize it's not fungible. We must realize the value of that second bank account. In a place like India, the amount of respect that any academician, and certainly an IIT faculty member, and even more so an IIT Madras faculty member gets, is something that I have experienced firsthand. And that's something we cannot and should not take lightly. This is society's hard earned currency, hard earned sort of, goodwill dollars that they are
Yeah.
choosing to pay us. And again, something that
Very interesting.
we should find value in.
Can I ask you then, IIT Madras, is it the best place to build a faculty career?
100%. I'll say IITs broadly in India, but I'll talk to IIT Madras because that's a case I have had I have had first hand experience of working in and also having observed from the outside. Um, our faculty here are encouraged in every way possible to lead a multidimensional life. In fact, in 2011, Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy, the then director, laid out in a large group faculty meeting his vision for what a faculty member should look like. And he showed a spider web graph with 7 axes. You have teaching, you have research, you have industry engagement, government engagement, societal engagement, entrepreneurship through startups, and advisory. And you can choose to be good at any one or more of these 7 axes, and this is the place to be for you. You can say, I'm going to be excellent at solving industry problems, but on all of the other 6 axes, I will show my interest. I may not choose to invest a lot of my time and resources in that direction, but we have faculty here who have made a phenomenal impact on industry problems. We have faculty here who say pursuing blue sky ideas that are so far out today that you can't imagine what would happen if they succeeded. We have faculty here pursuing those ideas. We have faculty here who've made their pursuit be focused around creating new startups, which is translating ideas to be of societal benefit. We have faculty here who, apart from doing some or all of these, are excellent teachers. So you can choose your axis of excellence, and every one of them has their own reward structure at IIT Madras that is the best in business. I'll give you just one example to sort of wrap this idea up for you. We have a very active patent office that files by far the most number of patents of any institution in India.
Yeah, Professor
Actually,
Commerce says one a day.
we've far exceeded that. That's just the starting number. The value created out of them largely flows back to the inventors.
Okay.
more than 72% is the number. 72% of the upside that an invention garners for IIT Madras is plowed back into the inventor's pockets.
Right.
This is an extremely aggressive stance that IIT Madras has taken. No other IIT, to the best of my knowledge,
So far.
has followed suit and taken this aggressive a posture
Right.
in rewarding their inventors back again.
It's very
And
interesting.
same is the case with startups, same is the case with industrial consultancy. Our industrial consultancy policy is among the most faculty friendly in the whole world. We have by far perfected that art, I'll say. The policy is one of the best in the world, and we are by far among the most active industry facing institution in the country today.
Yes. Let's go back to the beginning. You were a student here, I think 88 to 92. Did I get that right?
Yes.
How was the campus back then? Like these things you're talking about, I'm guessing that at the time professors had maybe two axes, like teaching and research, maybe. That's it, right?
And industrial consultancy.
Oh.
So that industry consulting axis goes back to the very DNA of IIT Madras in the fact that Germans mentored this institution, and German institutions are known to be very industry attached. So that DNA was sort of was bred into this system even as early as 1959. As you know, IIT Madras was founded in 1959, and in 1960, if I'm not mistaken, our industrial consultancy and sponsored research office was created. So even in 1960, faculty here were expected to be working a part of their time on solving industry problems. Um, so yes, so life in the late 80s and early 90s at IIT Madras was, I'll say, there were broadly some things that have remained the same as I experience them today, and some things have obviously changed and moved on. We had a much smaller headcount of both students and faculty. The students were all very close to each other. I see that missing in today's students because we have such large numbers here. But the idea of pursuing excellence as defined by oneself is a trait that has remained with us for the 60 plus years that this institution has existed. Faculty and students pursue what they think is excellence.
Right.
And giving each of them the freedom to do what they think is excellence, and giving each of them the pathway, enabled pathway, to go in their chosen direction is something that IIT Madras has done very, very well in comparison to many, many other Indian institutions, I will say.
Very interesting. Professor, I have to complete this conversation by asking you which hostel you were from and what was your nickname back in Insti?
252 room number Ganga Hostel. And my name today, at least the official name, is Mahesh V. Panchagnula. Back in the school days, my name, as is the case with most Telugu people, was PV Mahesh. My initials were PV, and so my nickname was PV. Most of my friends even today address me as PV, and so that's it.
Nice, 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 nice. Um, uh, you went abroad after Insti at 92. I think that was the norm, right? In the 90s, everybody went abroad.
Practically,
Uh, did your entire class go abroad?
a very small fraction stayed back. I'll say 80+% went abroad.
But it's totally changed now. Like that doesn't happen now. I guess.
It's it's the nature of how countries develop. Back when I was getting ready to make my choice, I had an offer, a fully funded master's program study offer from Purdue University. I also had an industry job with a leading MNC in India at that time as a project trainee for some 8,000 rupees a month and $1,200 a month stipend on a master's study program. It was not just about the money, but the opportunities that each of these would later on open up.
Yeah.
were vastly different back then. Today, a student, can have a master's option to study at one of the world's best universities, and the same person would have an excellent job offer somewhere in India to pursue their trade or to pursue a professional a career right here in India, and they would be more comparable than
In some fields, I think India is better now.
for sure. We are among the world's best in many different fields.
And also, I think that students have the opportunity to start up or join a startup, and there's the entrepreneurship, especially a deep tech entrepreneurship side, engineering entrepreneurship avenue opening up for students.
That that has been a dimension of the last 10 years or maybe 7 8 years that has completely changed the landscape for what students can do. It's far more, I'll say, even fashionable to take a break from a career driven thinking for 2 3 years and try a risky idea. Should that succeed, you have your own launchpad into a world that you couldn't have gotten into without that launchpad. If it didn't succeed, it is now extremely fashionable on one CV to say I tried this startup but failed. That actually gives the person a leg up.
Yeah.
So I think our biggest victory of India's biggest victory of the last 7 or 8 years has been this treating of failure as a credential, as a medal on your chest.
Yeah.
Wear that failure proudly and go forth and interview for a job.
Yeah. And you were involved in the IIT Madras incubation cell. You were heading the cell for a while. So this is a structural thing that's also like been promoted by IIT Madras very actively in the last maybe 10, 15 years or so. Um, could you run us through how the incubation cell works broadly, and what are some of the success stories that have happened?
The incubation cell is an enabler entity. It's there to enable faculty and students largely, as well as outsiders, to come in, take advantage of this IIT ecosystem. This, IIT Madras is one large deep tech research and development ecosystem. The incubation cell helps people take advantage of this deep tech ecosystem to create value through startups. So let's say I'm a faculty member, let's say a student and I have an idea to move forward to create a particular kind of a startup. I can go to the incubation cell and create a startup. They'll help me create the startup. They'll take a very tiny equity position, usually between 2 to 5% or maybe 6%. And in return, you get a whole range of services on the tap that you could avail of. And, just focus on doing your work, doing your development work, and really, creating value for the employees and your customers and stakeholders.
Do I have to be a IITM student to apply to the incubation cell?
Not necessarily. Rank outsiders do apply. But the question that the incubation cell usually asks of them is, why do you want to be in IIT Madras's incubator and not somewhere else?
Sure.
So make that value that you want to derive out of this ecosystem clear.
Hmm. And so I think some of the most popular incubators are also like Alumni, Unifor. I think both of those companies were not IIT Madras founders.
Correct. Agnikul at least had a faculty mentor
Yeah,
from
faculty.
IIT Madras, but Unifor was not. There's several companies like that. The DocSap was
DocSap, Aether, Hyperverge, these are IITM founders.
alumni. IITM alumni who went on to come back and incubate their companies. Hyperverge, for example, could have chosen to incubate their company wherever they wanted to go. But they chose the IIT Madras incubator after graduating out, not just simply as alumni, but because this was a good enabler for them, enabler platform for them.
Hmm. Do you think IIT Madras is ahead of other universities in India or in the region as far as incubation is concerned?
For sure, we have probably created the most value. So I look at it as one of two ways. The IIT Madras incubated startups are startups that are largely faculty and students plus some alumni and outsiders, but are stationed here to take advantage of this ecosystem. So one could argue that IIT Madras had a small but active role in enabling these enterprises. And then there is a large group of startups that our alumni have gone on and created value somewhere in the whole world.
Yeah.
You talk of Perplexity, you talk of Infosys with Chris being involved, right? All of these are enterprises that have happened in the outside world where IIT Madras has only been involved as one of their alumni co-founders, one of their alumni being co-founders. The former kind, where IIT Madras Incubator and the IIT Madras deep tech ecosystem had an active role, is probably has the most impressive report cards of all of IITX incubators and largely academic incubators. in the
That's very
country.
interesting. Of course, IIT Madras alumnus from the beginning of IIT Madras, 1959, haven't really waited for the incubation cell to come up to start their companies. They've always done it. I think the number you told me earlier was 2000 plus companies at least have an IITM alumnus as founder.
That's right.
And some of them are Infosys, Perplexity, the ones you mentioned, Swiggy and Sugar and Ease My Trip. The list goes on. And what you're saying is that, of course, some of them choose to incubate at IIT Madras for various reasons. Um, could be because they're close to IIT, could be because they're hiring from here, could be because they have a faculty, access to resources, mentors, and so on. Nice. And maybe also just because we started a little earlier and because the ecosystem already existed, we are a little ahead of the other IITs.
It's not just that. The early start gave us I'll say, an unfair advantage. And you could credit a small group of people for that early start. Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala deserves certainly a mention, and he was largely responsible for the creation of some of the early entities that resulted in this activity. But it is the system, and even more than the systems that are in place, the DNA of this institution is to do translational research, is not to devalue translational research.
Right.
The moment you tell a faculty member translational research is going to be valued as much, if not more, as path breaking blue sky research,
Yeah.
you will get phenomenal value show up in that first bucket. The fact that we had an industrial consultancy and sponsored research office having been created as early as 1960 tells you that even back then it was perfectly fashionable to work with a government entity or an industry partner to only solve their problem and not let that be devalued intellectually as a sort of a lower pursuit.
Sure.
This was a disease that plagued a large part of Indian academia for a very long time in the 70s, in the 80s.
Which is that we will do more fundamental research and
Which is the more, sort of the more intellectual place to be.
the translation work is left to the companies.
That philosophy
Has changed.
has now completely changed on the dime, I'll say, in the last 10 years. That philosophy has changed. There is equal emphasis on both pursuits. And so a faculty member who is there to quote unquote perfect technologies is not looked down upon in comparison to somebody who created that technology. Right? So that's I'll say, that has been IIT Madras's biggest victory over the last 10 years. That we will value all of these pursuits with equal respect.
Sure.
And I would like to, I think Professor Bhaskar Ramamurthy had a large role to play in this, enabling this new kind of a DNA. It's like you take the old DNA and you mutate it in a direction that rewards both of these pursuits in equal measure.
I'm thinking of some examples. I know that Professor Satyan Subaya, I read recently, is working on manufacturing in space, which sounds like something very futuristic.
Yes,
Uh,
there's a lot of science to be understood to get
Yeah.
there. But if that science is understood and if we are able to translate the work into some technology benefit, one can reap the rewards in multiple measures.
Sure. Okay. That's amazing. So, Professor, we were talking about alumni contribution and how a lot of alumnus have over the years been entrepreneurs. And I know that you were the dean of the alumni office or the alumni and corporate relations office. Um, from what I understand, the ACR office works with alumnus, but also is involved in a lot of fundraising. I understand that IIT Madras last year raised more than 500 crores. Um, I think it's the highest among all IITs. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
As on that date, if I'm not mistaken. But the 500 number needs to be understood completely. About 280, 290 crores came from a large number of donors and corporate partners. The remaining 200 plus odd crores came from one donor. It was the single largest gift to IIT Madras as on that date. It was a stock gift in kind, so it was tentatively valued at about that amount. Now, these stock gifts have a way of
going up and down.
going up and down, so one has to understand that 500 crore number in context. But the 290 crores was in itself among the largest ever by any IIT, not including this large gift. The amount of money that corporate partners, hundreds of companies, have gifted through their CSR programs to work with IIT Madras is again one of the most active in all of India.
These are gifts and not like contracts.
No, the contracts part this year I am told will reach a number greater than 700 crores. This is vested interest driven work between a company and IIT Madras.
This is a consultancy.
Those are consultancy, research and development. They come in multiple flavors: technology, co-development. All of this is about 700 crores of work with private industry.
Right.
And I call it vested interest driven development idea work. What we are talking about earlier through the Alumni and Corporate Relations Office was mostly philanthropy for the greater good of society.
Can I ask you, Professor? The curious mind wants to know what is the reason why IIT raises so much money and how does that get used?
The reason IIT Madras raises this kind of money is because we were again a forerunner to create a professionally run active Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations with a dedicated sales and marketing team to go at fundraising as a process and as a profession. And the money that comes in serves various causes. The easiest to understand could be to say every deserving student at IIT Madras, deserving financially for whatever financial distress their families may be in, has received an alumni or a corporate partner funded scholarship. Every student below a parental income of 5 lakhs today pays no fee at IIT Madras.
Okay.
And we've created multiple programs. There's a program we called the Vidya Lakshmi Scholarship Program that I helped ideate and create, which today supports upwards of 500 students, not just at IIT Madras. Vidya Lakshmi is now funding students at all IITs. We are an enabler to make sure some student sitting in Dharwad gets the benefit of a corporate partner wanting to support IIT students in their education pursuit. Coming back to IIT Madras again, a lot of this money helps create centers of excellence. We have a center of excellence in wind energy, in logistics, in tech excellence that were funded by FedEx, Walmart, an individual, Venkatrangan. We have lots of donors who have created these centers of excellence, who have helped ideate and create these centers of excellence in spheres of activity of large societal and national relevance. They run training programs, they do research, they do technology development, translation through startups, very multidimensional in their offering for the society at large.
Professor, during your stint at ACR office, I know we were talking about fundraising, but also we got to work together on an interesting project, the Ask IITM project, which started under your aegis. And I remember our first few conversations very well, where we were trying to figure out what to do to improve student experience at JOSA. How did that, I mean, I know it from my side, from the admin side, how did that really start?
It started with the chairman of our board, Dr. Pawan Goenkar, repeatedly asking this question: if you are NIRF number one, why isn't that driving other choices from students? Why are other institutions being preferred in certain choice measures? over IIT Madras. And so that led us to, sort of think of different things to do and ask IITM, which was an initiative, as you know, there was an alumni run, alumni funded, and alumni sort of managed initiative. And as you yourself, as an alumnus, have taken that bull by the horns and really tamed it. And you've done a fantastic job, I'll say, of moving the needle on a very, um, very difficult project.
I think when we were talking about first, we were talking about this idea that from an outsider's perspective, from an insider's perspective, of course, you're on campus and or you know someone at IIT, you know a lot about what's happening. From an outsider's perspective, you don't really know what's happening at IIT. You know it's a great place, whatever. Maybe don't have the details, don't have the avenue to ask someone. And earlier there used to be physical counseling and stuff like that. So I think that was a big lacuna, right?
I think the lack of physical counseling sort of has been felt for a long time. And Ask IITM steps in to fill that gap in some nice way, in a in as in a small way. It's not really cannot replace physical counseling. Doing physical counseling with 50,000 JE
Yeah.
advanced qualified students is simply not a.
Yeah.
It's very difficult as a proposition.
Yeah, it's a scale issue.
It's a scale issue. So I'll say Ask IITM was the next best thing we could do to that. And the purpose of Ask IITM was to not just inform, as you said, to inform people of what's happening here, but to really be a validated go-to resource for students to understand the dimensions, the measures that can be factored in to help them make choices. So it's not just telling them here is a program and these are the good things about this program vis-a-vis a second. It is to give them the metadata that they can it gives them a framework to think about their own decisions. And I think that was the biggest delivery, biggest success of Ask IITF.
And we have traveled together to Hyderabad, and we've had events in Chennai together also, where we have interacted with parents and students, and the kind of questions they ask sometimes, it's quite clear that they are keen to absorb more if we tell them, and they're keen to listen in. And so I've seen that you've sort of been very patient answering parent questions and students. And is this something that you really care about, like how choices are being made by parents and students?
I think what you bring is for a long time, I felt the need to create systems and to be a vehicle for others to make informed decisions. This idea of me being and me creating vehicles for others to be able to make informed decisions has been sort of driving me for some time now. And I think in some time to come, we'll see the manifestation of some of those vehicles.
Okay.
Today's electronic media opportunities galore in the manner in which these vehicles can be designed. You don't need to travel physically to thousands of colleges to make this happen.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still there's some ideas that are bouncing between the years that I'm expecting will be out in the open in a short period of time.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. As you were saying it, I'm thinking that the idea that parents and students making choices during their college admission period is not limited only to IITs. It's across the board.
And also, it's even more I mean, of course, that is exactly as you said, Amrut, giving them giving them all the information in a digested fashion, digestible fashion, at least, is a very important. Um, I think it's a very important function that has not been served in India. I get
In fact, I would say it's misserved because there are a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of things which are very half baked, and they choose to mislead more than they choose to lead.
Well, uh, yes, and that's one of the downsides of the internet-enabled era. Largely,
Yeah.
that credibility um, is a stripe that is earned.
In the absence of IIT professors talking about their courses, a lot of other people have on their behalf.
Correct.
And it's okay. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's off the mark.
Correct. So I want to see if we can create a platform, be the voice, be the credible voice for parents and students to make informed decisions.
Sure. And also, I think in this sort of not to demean other people who are creating content, but what happens is that fields change. What is aerospace today? What is chemical engineering today? What is metallurgy today? May not have been what it was 10 years back, and sort of you need a insider's view to have access to what is new, what is the latest, and so on, right?
On a continuing basis. Because if I am the parent of an 18-year-old today or a 17-year-old, the parents of the 17-year-old plus the 17-year-old are trying to together do what they think is right for the next 40 years career of the student.
Yeah.
And that's hard to prognosticate, obviously, but the elements of what would go into designing a long, sustainable, successful career need to be brought out forth, and let each parent plus child take their own call in a framework where informed decisions are possible.
Right. And just to illustrate this point a little bit, maybe you can take us through in your own department, which is applied mechanics and biomedical engineering. How have things changed over the last 10 years? And
Well, we used to be, when I joined, I was, I think, the 17th or 18th faculty member who joined the department, meaning we had about 18 of us. Today we are about 35, 36 plus, somewhere in there. So we've almost doubled in 15 years in headcount of faculty, countering faculty who have retired along the way. So IIT Madras largely is a growing institution in our faculty headcount, and our department has outpaced the institute's own growth. So that's the first part I'd see as different. So we have a large number of faculty members who are pursuing many, many different stripes.
so yeah, so as you were saying that the faculty members, I'm guessing that what you're also implying is that the research that's being done by the faculty body has
broadened,
broadened.
right? And also, as a result of that breadth, we are now able to ideate new teaching programs. We have a couple of very exciting master's programs that have been in the works that have been sort of offered for some time now. We are now getting ready to launch our own undergraduate programs at the cusp of where the traditional disciplines fell.
Okay. Will it be for this year admission?
Yes, yes. So we'll talk about that in a separate, in a separate video later on. But these are a couple of very, very exciting, contemporary, highly industry focused, highly value driven undergrad programs that we are going to be launching in July 25.
Programs.
Plurals, in plural, correct.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So just to summarize, what you were saying is that from a parent perspective and as parent student unit perspective, there's a lot to absorb. It's better to absorb it from a credible source which has the information, which has the latest information, which is being continuously updated. And there is a sort of lack there that maybe the content that's available to them is not very reliable right now.
And not tailored for that informed decision framework. It's like if I want to make an informed decision, it's not enough if I have rice and water. The rice and water has to be cooked into edible anna,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And having that served, as a meal
yeah,
is what I think, and with credibility, of course.
yeah. Nice. Professor, thank you so much. It's been a long conversation. We started with best place to build faculty careers and moved through the ACR office, spoke a little bit about the incubation center, and we spoke a lot about Ask IITM. Thank you so much, Professor.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Amrut, for having me. And I'm sure I wish your podcast all the very best. It fills a gap in a big way, and I wish it continued success.
Thank you, Professor.